There is a principle called Wu Wei, meaning none or not, a negation. Wu Wei has a combination of meanings. It can mean action, making, but the best translation I have found for it is forcing. And so, Wu Wei is the principle of not forcing in anything that you do. Now, we know when we watch any performance of an artist, be it a dancer, an actor, or a musician, we know immediately when the performance is forced. We say it doesn't ring true. It's too artificial. We sense it because we know, deep down, that truth doesn't arrive by force. It moves differently. It has a kind of grace, a rhythm, that emerges only when you get out of your own way. This is where the Taoist idea of Wu Wei enters, a principle that often confuses people. They hear non-doing and assume it means laziness, passivity, as if the wise person was simply sitting around, letting life happen. But Wu Wei doesn't mean doing nothing. It means not forcing anything. It's the subtle art of knowing when to act, and more importantly, when not to. In judo, you never use strength at the wrong moment. You wait until your opponent is off balance, and then, with the lightest touch, you send him flying across the room. Not because you fought harder, but because you moved with the flow of things. So the Taoist doesn't oppose effort, but questions misplaced effort. That compulsive drive to control everything, to interfere with the natural unfolding of life. And when we begin to see this, we ask a different kind of question. Not how can I make it work, but where is it already working? And how can I move with that? Now, when people first hear about Wu Wei, they often take it to mean do nothing. Sit back, drift along, let the world sort itself out. But this is a mistake. Wu Wei doesn't mean idleness. It doesn't mean apathy. It means not forcing. There is a world of difference between action that arises naturally and action that is squeezed out of anxiety or control. You can see this clearly in the martial arts. You don't use strength all the time. You wait. You move only when your opponent has lost balance. And at that moment, with very little effort, everything changes. You don't act before the moment, and you don't hold back when the moment comes. That is Wu Wei. It's not passivity, it's precision. It's not weakness, it's skill. There is a kind of intelligence in nature that moves without being pushed. Birds don't rehearse their flight. Clouds don't have a plan. And yet somehow everything fits together. But we, with all our thoughts and intentions, often fall out of rhythm. We try to make things happen instead of listening for when to move and when to be still. To follow the Tao is to become attuned to that rhythm, to know the difference between rowing and sailing. One exhausts you, the other carries you. You see, the whole point is that life moves of its own accord, just like your heartbeat. You don't command your heart to beat or your hair to grow. The same is true of your destiny, if you'd only trust it. When you stop commanding and start listening, you'll notice a gentle current pulling you, and that current is wiser than anything you could force. So the question isn't whether you're working hard. The question is whether your action belongs to the moment or whether it's resisting it. Of course, once someone hears all this, they may say, "Ah, I see now. I'll stop trying. I'll just let go. Be spontaneous." But you can't try to be spontaneous. That too is a kind of forcing. It's just the same habit dressed in different clothes. You can see it in people who decide they're going to live freely. They look at the rules of society and then deliberately do the opposite. But that's not freedom. That's still reaction. It's the mirror image of control, and just as rigid. You see, true spontaneity isn't planned. It's not cultivated. It arises when there's no longer anyone trying to be spontaneous. The moment you say to yourself, I'm going to let go, you've already tightened your grip. You see, most of the time we act from noise, desire, fear, comparison, constant movement, with no direction. And under that noise is a very old habit. The belief that if we don't push, life won't move. So we confuse urgency with purpose. We mistake tension for clarity. But clarity doesn't come through effort. It comes the moment you stop interfering. There's a kind of shift that happens when you're no longer chasing after anything. Not because you've given up, but because you've finally paused long enough to see there was nowhere to go. And in that pause, something becomes audible, something real. Not an idea, not a plan. A pull, a current. It doesn't announce itself with words, but with movement, as if the whole world had been waiting for you to notice that it was already flowing. You see, there's no need to fight the river. You're not beside it, you are in it. In fact, you always have been. So, this curious thing we call Wu Wei, the art of not forcing, isn't about striving or straining. It's not a matter of pushing at life. It's a matter of noticing, simply attending to what's already here, before the mind rushes in with its labels. That's where life begins to feel alive again, not as something you control, but something you remember. To come back into rhythm with life, you don't need to add anything. You need to remember something you've forgotten. Remember what it was like before everything had to make sense. Before you were told who you are and what matters. Before the world was sliced up into names and labels and boxes. As a child, you didn't try to understand the sky. You just looked at it. You asked questions that had no answers. How far does it go? What's beyond the stars? And you didn't need a conclusion. You were content to wonder. The world was strange then, mysterious, alive, always becoming something new. And that strangeness wasn't a problem. It was a delight. Children spin in circles just to feel the world wobble. They stare at lights and shadows without trying to figure them out. They know, without needing to explain it, that reality is a very peculiar thing. But we are trained out of this, trained to name everything, to define, to sort and compare. And in doing so, we begin to treat life as if it were known, predictable, concrete. Yet underneath all of that is space, still open, still waiting, what the Taoists called Ching, not emptiness as absence, but emptiness as possibility. Space is not something you see. It's what allows you to see at all. If you ever stood on a quiet hillside at night and looked out into the endless dark, you might have felt it, that exquisite stillness, almost frightening, almost overwhelming. That is the space I'm talking about, the space that holds everything together and yet is itself no thing. We rarely pause long enough to sense it, and yet it is the mother of every form, every dance, every heartbeat. So if you want to feel life again, look with the eyes you had before you were told what to see. Because the world hasn't stopped being mysterious. You've only stopped noticing. If you really want to see, you have to set aside everything you think you know. Not forever, just for now. just long enough to look again with fresh eyes. Check your assumptions at the door. All your beliefs about what's real, what's true, what's good, what's bad. All your religious ideas, your philosophies, your labels. Let them rest. You can pick them up again when you leave, if you still need them. This is not about rejecting thought. It's about seeing what's underneath it, before the mind starts carving everything up into categories. Because the truth is, we don't see the world as it is. We see the world through habits, through memory, comparison, language. And we rarely question the lens we're looking through. Red, blue, hard, soft, man, woman, good, evil. These are names. Useful, yes, but limited. They never touch what the thing actually is. To find your way back to what's real, you must be willing to look without names. To sit with something, without immediately deciding what it means. This is difficult, because the mind wants to define everything. It wants to speak, to label, to declare. But if you treat those thoughts like passing birds, like ripples in a pond, then something else begins to show itself. Not an explanation, not a conclusion, just presence. The texture of being before the thinking starts. That is where the Tao becomes visible. So now, listen. There's no need to concentrate, no need to search for meaning. Just let the moment arrive as it is. You've spent so much energy trying to shape the world, trying to shape yourself, trying to make things happen. And yet life has always moved without your effort. The seasons turn, the body breathes, the stars continue in their course. Nothing is held together by your worry. This is the heart of Wu Wei. Not passivity, but trust. Not inaction, but a kind of quiet cooperation. You don't have to push the river. It already knows where to go. So if you feel tired, you don't need to fix that. Rest is part of the rhythm too. Let the thoughts pass like birds in the sky. Let the tension in your hands loosen. There is nothing urgent here. You were never outside the flow. You only thought you had to control it. Now that you've stopped reaching, you might notice everything is still moving. The world carries on, and somehow, so do you. Because when you allow life to move on its own, if you realize it always has, and it brought you here. So perhaps, my friends, the bravest thing you could ever do is to stop gripping life so tightly, to stand calmly within its endless mystery, unafraid, to remember that the very same power which shaped you from a single cell, that wondrous unknowable force, has never stopped guiding you, even now. Trust it. Let it carry you. That is the heart of Wu Wei,